Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the final episode number 4 of Compassion Through Conversation. I'm one of your hosts, John Quateraro, alongside with me, Jamie, Camilla, and Haley. And today we have the senior class president, Olamide, here with us, and she's going to be talking a little bit about what she does with her obviously being president, and we're also talk about a couple questions we have to ask her. So I want to start off by asking you this: what's your major, and then I wanted to also ask you when did you decide to run for senior class president as well?
So I'm a business management major with a minor in advertising, and I'm from Westchester, New York. And so the reason why I chose to run for class president because a lot of people told me to run. I was originally going to run for vice president because that's what I've been doing for the past 3 years. But then a lot of people in SG encouraged me to run for class president. So that's kind of what kind of drew me to run for it.
Yeah, so I guess to get into our first question, as you know, and as we mentioned that we had conversation with or Rachel was on our podcast 2 podcasts ago, and she was basically just talking about her own experience, her club's experience, and just like overall just the student experience with hate in our communities. How does SGA fit into this mix? Like how do you guys necessarily like implement yourself when you hear about these types of issues as you are the representatives of your own individual classes, but also just the student body as a whole?
SGA kind of got involved in it my freshman year of being SGA, and so that's when we implemented the special representative cabinet. So then we wanted to make sure that everyone on campus was made sure it was being represented on SGA. So we implemented a multicultural student representative and an identity which would represent LGBTQ plus community. So usually if any hate crimes or like actions would happen against students, they would go to those reps, and SGA is like the e-board, and all the presidents will meet together in a meeting and kind of figure out what steps we can take, what admin we can talk to. And so with the recent action that happened against one of the first year students in Irma, SGA kind of worked with the GSA, which is a club focused for LGBTQ community members. We kind of worked with them to figure out what ways we can make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so obviously that actions was taken and that there was improvements. So now there will be housing for specific people with different identities. So that will be a different way of a safe space. And people are going to be more held accountable. So we're just mainly people to make sure that admin does help hold people accountable.
So do you think as senior class president that you yourself can like help everybody come together to make an impact on the student body by like bringing more awareness to the topic and hopefully in turn creating the change that we need to see?
As senior class president, I can only do so much. I think it also relies on every other individual in the Quinnipiac community. You can't really expect change from one person. I think change can really come from everyone else from doing their own part. And so I can only do so much. I can only plan so many events along with my cabinet. But if no one goes to those events, if no one is willing to get educated, not much change can really happen. So that's where I kind of stand on my end.
I definitely think it's tough because there's so many students here at Quinnipiac that it's hard to reach them all at once. But I think what you're doing is an amazing job, and of course, what Rachel is also doing for the ASA club as well.
Yeah, so like going off what like JQ saying, Rachel as the SA president, she was telling us like everything, like her club plans and stuff like that. So do you think like her being like a senior and like a president of her own club, and then you being like a senior and president of our class, do you think it's easier to like just like get together and just like plan stuff together and kind of like create more awareness, since like you kind of have like that similar just like mindset and both like are seniors and are president of your own like clubs and stuff like that?
Yeah, so me and Rachel are friends actually, and so we always talk about ways SGA and ASA can do things together and plan events. So SGA has been trying to make strides to kind of have plan events with other orgs, and so just simple things like that can also help because people do come to SGA events, but not many people go to multicultural events. So when SGA partners with like culture orgs, more people are more likely to go to those events. So that's what SGA has been trying to do. So I believe it's like much easier too, because since we do have the same mindset to make sure that awareness does happen, it's much easier to like make change and plan things to see change happen.
Right. So last week I was part of a focus group for actually this class. And one of the questions was, have you seen or heard um any issues like against Asian Americans like at Quinnipiac, and like no one said anything. And like for example, like I don't see anything or hear from anything, but you being like the senior class president, being very involved like in like the whole like Quinnipiac world, like have you heard of anything like discrimination or anything like that?
For specifically Asian Americans?
Yeah.
Personally, I haven't.
Okay.
I do have a guy friend. He's a senior, and he's been called names by his friend group, but he doesn't like take it to offense. So I wouldn't necessarily say that would be a hate thing, but he has spoken up to them and told them that like it does hurt like it does hurt and things like that. So he does educate his friends, so they have stopped. But that's the only instance against Asian Americans that I've seen.
We were talking to Rachel too. She said she's like, seen or heard a few things from like other peers around her, but most of the stuff is really kept behind, the walls and stuff like that. But I really think it's interesting that you at least have a story like from a friend or your guy friend, and he talks about it like that, because there are people out there who are affected by it. And that's why we started this podcast, because we wanted to make people, and of course students at Quinnipiac, more aware of this situation on hand.
Yeah, like people do. I know like other people of different races that do experience hate crimes. People have come up to me to address it, and then we go from there. So specifically, not Asian Americans, I haven't seen, but people oftentimes don't really feel comfortable going to talk about it to administration because they feel as if the people won't be held accountable, because it's very hard to hold people accountable for you to have proof, especially if those things were said to you. But if things were written down or texted or you have a screenshot, it's much easier. But if it's just said, it's really hard for people to come out and say that this has happened to me.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that, because that's like a question we asked Rachel about, like what like has like administration done for like your club, and they've done some, but like not to like a great extent. Do you feel like the new like equity and inclusion new like person for Quinnipiac like will help with that?
I definitely think it will help because SJ, we've only had Don Sawyer to help us with diversity, inclusion, and equity and things like that. And so the only thing we really mainly got out of that was increased funding to help multicultural orgs, to help them plan more events that they feel will help benefit the student body. And so I think an additional person, I think it helps create more ideas to help minorities on campus, just so that it's not only on one person. I don't think diversity should just be held on one person, which is Don Sawyer. I think it should be held on multiple people at an upper level.
Would you say the biggest difference is from being vice president? Because you said you were vice president for 3 years now, correct? Before president. What would you say the biggest difference is in the role of vice president and president?
I think the biggest difference is more people are coming up to me with more issues they see on campus. Usually they would go to Sophia Marshall, was the president of our class while I was vice president. More people go to her for those issues, but now I see more people have come to talk to me about issues they have experienced. So it's just more of accountability on my end to make sure that I'm following through and making sure people do see me as someone they can come to.
That's very cool. Because I was gonna ask, like, do you feel like you see a lot of like, do a lot of people come up to you? Would you say like there's a lot of problems on Quinnipiac's campus right now?
Yeah, when I first got elected, I got like 4 emails the day after saying this thing has happened. I was just like, okay, great, that's cool. Like, I think I started right away. So it's just very interesting to see like the change by dynamic of the position, even though I wouldn't think it was much change, but there actually was.
Yeah, because it's interesting for you to see that, because obviously, I'm no school president and stuff like that, especially for the senior class. So you definitely see a lot more and hear a lot more than all of us do. So I really think it's interesting that you get to see that all, because, I feel like I'm living like a daily life at Quinnipiac where you never know like what's behind the shadow behind you and what's going around around with the student life. You might hear rumors here and there, but you really don't get to know it unless you're really like really a part of it. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting that you do that.
Yeah, and I think it's also so important. Like you, I like know you, and like you're very just like bubbly and know a lot of people. And I think with that, like for example, like Rachel, like if there's like an issue or anything, like I know she'll feel comfortable coming to you. And like I feel like in a position like that, you need to be like personable and like know that people can like come to you for like anything.
Yeah, I definitely think that's really important because sometimes people come to me with like issues that like I have no idea how to handle, especially with like things like sexual assault, rape, and things like that. And I'll be like, I have no idea what the school's process is, but I'll get back to you. And when like in those instances, and like you have to make sure that you're making sure that the other individual is feeling comfortable, and you don't make them feel worse about the issues that had happened to them. So it's just making sure that you yourself is like are making sure that wherever you go, like you always make a great impression of yourself so that people do know that you're open to willing to talk to them.
Moving forward, you were saying that this is a communal issue. This is something that we all need to kind of take part into. Obviously, there won't ever really be an end just because hate will always exist in some capacity, which is unfortunate to say the least. But how do you think that individuals can play a role in this, more so than just like being bystanders to situations, but might actually be able to take some sort of action, even if it is very small action?
I definitely think people can educate themselves. I think people find themselves, they have a person of color as a friend and they continue to ask that person of color, but that person is not your sole form of information. I think you should go out and find things out yourselves, do the research yourself, so then you yourself can form an opinion on something and not like do form an opinion on what the majority is saying. You should do find both sides and figure out an idea from there. I also think that it's really important for people to go out to multicultural orgs and go to their club events and just to show support, because you yourself just posting social media I don't think is enough. I think to actually taking action and saying like, hey, I'm here to support you, and going to those events and making sure that they are showing up to people that actually need support.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on for the final episode of Compassion Through Conversation. You really did shed some more light on it because you are the senior class president, so you definitely see a lot more than we see, and we're just happy that we can, give kids more awareness about this situation on hand here.
Yeah, just thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Olamide.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for
Yeah, thank you,
coming.
Mommy Day. And then, guys, thank you all for tuning in to the episodes. We appreciate it a lot. This is for our PR capstone class. So we appreciate everything you guys have been doing for us, supporting us, sharing our videos. So we all want to thank you for that.